In this video, we look at proportional reasoning. What you'll soon discover is that proportions actually infiltrate all aspects of our lives. Let's take a look at several examples. Application problem 1. A muffin recipe calls for 2 cups of blueberries and yields 12 muffins. How many cups of blueberries would be needed to make 30 muffins? Now, all you bakers out there might be able to solve this problem without setting up any kind of algebraic equation. But for some people, this kind of a problem is a little more tricky. Now, how do we know we can use a proportion to actually solve this problem? If you note, we have ratios. In fact, we have 2 ratios that we're going to set equal to each other. What do I mean? Well, a ratio comes into play when we're comparing quantities. Notice we have 2 cups of blueberries, and that's being related to 12 muffins. In a similar fashion as how many cups of blueberries is related to 30 muffins. This is an ideal situation where we can set up a proportion. Let's go about doing exactly that. I'm going to start with 2 cups of blueberries in my numerator. And those 2 blueberries yield 12 muffins. Now, when I go to set up my second ratio in the proportion, I have to make sure that I have cups in the numerator and muffins in the denominator, or number of muffins in the denominator. The second relationship says how many cups of blueberries. Well, we don't know how many cups of blueberries in that second ratio, so I'll put an X in place of cups. We do know that corresponds to 30 muffins. That is, 2 cups of blueberries corresponds to 12 muffins in the same way that X cups of blueberries corresponds to 30 muffins. There's our proportion. Let's get rid of those units now that we know everything corresponds. So we have 2 over 12 equals X over 30. This is a simple proportion problem. And how do we want to solve? Well, I like to cross multiply. So that's my first step. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cross multiply both sides of this equation. I'm going to take 2 times 30, and that's going to give me 60. And then I'm going to take 12 times X. And that gives me 12x. That's a very simple algebraic equation, and we know how to solve that, don't we? We divide both sides of our equation by 12 in order to get x alone. So that tells me that x is simply 60 divided by 12, or in other words, 5. That means that 5 cups of blueberries is what is needed in order to make 30 muffins. That's it. Let's take a look at our second application problem. Emily is making goodie bags for her son's birthday party. For each 3 lollipops she puts in, she also puts in 2 candy bars. If Emily uses 57 lollipops to fill the bags, how many candy bars has she used? Haha, so I'm a picture girl, so I'm just tempted. I'm going to draw myself a little bag really quick. And inside that little bag, I'm going to put 3 lollipops. And 3 lollipops means I have to put in 2 candy bars. And so that just gives me a visual for what's going on. But let's see if we can't write a proportion to go to this problem. For each 3 lollipops that Emily puts in the bag, she puts in 2 candy bars. That means we have a relationship between lollipops and candy bars. Specifically, we have 3 lollipops, and those 3 lollipops correspond to 2 candy bars, in the same fashion as 57 lollipops correspond to X candy bars. Notice, because we don't know how many candy bars correspond to the 57 lollipops. What's important to note, right, is that our units match. Lollipops are on top on both sides of this proportion. I can remove all of my units and write 3 is to 2 as 57 is to X. To solve this algebraic equation, we're going to cross multiply and divide. So we have 3 times X equals 57 times 2. And 57 times 2 is actually, pulling out a calculator, 114. I'm running out of space, so let me go over here to finish. 3x equals 114, and what do we need to do to finish and solve for x? Well, to solve for x, we need to divide both sides of our proportion by 3. And that tells us x is 114 divided by 3. Pull out your calculator again, and 114 divided by 3 is 38. X is 38. X represents the number of candy bars, and so Emily used 38 candy bars for her goodie bags. I don't know about you, but I find proportion problems actually fun to do. Let's take a look at one more example. In Las Vegas, the property tax on a $200,000 home is $1,300. At this rate, what would be the property tax on a $375,000 home? All right, you know what to do. We're going to set up a proportion. This time we're going to compare the cost of a home to the property tax. So at first, we're going to write down $200,000 because that's the cost of the home. And we're going to relate that to the property tax, which is $1,300. And I'm just going to put a little note over here on the side that tax is on the bottom and the home cost is on the top. That ratio corresponds to another ratio. What would be the property tax on a $375,000 home? So in this case, $375,000 is the cost of that home. That goes in the numerator. And the missing property tax, X, is what goes in the denominator. Let's finish by cross-multiplying, Let's finish by cross-multiplying and dividing. We cross-multiply across 200,000 times X, and that's going to give us 200,000X. And then we multiply across 1,300 times 375,000. I'm going to whip my calculator out. Oh my goodness, that gives me a huge number. That gives me 487,500,000. Let's double check. Make sure as you're doing this on your calculator, we get the right number of zeros here. 487,500,000. Now we go ahead and divide both sides of our equation by 200,000. Thank goodness for calculators is all I have to say. Though we could do it by hand if we wanted to. So let's take 487,500,000 and let's divide by 200,000. Make sure you type the correct zeros in if you're putting this into a calculator. And that gives us X is $2,437.50. I was going to say $24,000 is a little bit much for property tax, especially on a $375,000 home. So what is X? X is $2,437.50. That would be the property tax on a $375,000 home. Hopefully you had as much fun as I did solving these application problems, and hopefully you can apply these techniques as you work through your homework. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to contact me.